Hey everybody, how's it going? We are back in the powersaw shop. What are we doing today? Well, it's January and we cleaned the bench, which means it's time to get it dirty again. You guys know how we roll here. This is part 4 of how to port a chainsaw. For those of you that are just joining in now, this is a multiple part series teaching basic entry level porting, how to make your saw run a little bit stronger without getting into trouble. So this is basic entry-level porting. A good series to watch. If you guys are interested and you haven't seen it, go into my playlist and look at my chainsaw cutaway series. Right here. I cut a saw in half and I go over how all this stuff works. Good homework if you're new at working on 2-strokes. Okay, part 4. What tools do you need? This is everything that I would need, including a power saw, but everything that I would need to port a saw, and pretty much everything I use, is right here. We're going to add a few other little things to the kit. A good straight edge is nice. This is actually a machinist straight edge. I use this to mark cylinders, so this is another one we'll throw on the bench. I just kind of grabbed stuff and laid it out. But seriously, guys, this is all you need to port a power saw. And let's go over what we have here, and we can talk about costs, and we can also talk about other things you want that you might find useful depending on how far you want to go or what kind of grinding you want to do. So I'm going to pause you guys here, move you in closer so you can see, and let's go over what we have here. Sorry friends, I almost forgot something. I've been wanting to mention this in this series. One of the most important things if you're a saw porter, you got to be able to mimic a well-ported pipe saw. It gets people fired up when they say, how should my saw run when you're done? Or what's it going to do? And you go, it's going to do this. Bah, bah, bah. See how it gets on the pipe? Very important. You can use ba ba ba, wah wah wah, W or B is the two that I prefer, depending on the displacement of the saw you're mimicking. Super important, guys. If you're going to be a saw porter, you have to be able to make awesome saw sounds with your mouth. Any of you saw porters that are watching right now are probably giggling because it's true. Okay? So really work on that so that you can tell the people what the saw is going to sound like when it's done. Or when you're in a group and guys are like, how should a saw run? You can tell them it gets on the pipe right now. Okay, guys, let's stop monkeying around. Let's get down to business here. Okay, I'm going to do a quick overview of everything that's laid out here. Just making sure you guys are in. Oh yeah, we're good. In frame. Okay. Number one, most important thing, a notepad, okay? I keep a lot of notes in this book of every saw that I've ever ported is in there in one shape or another. You'll save a lot of time and you'll notice similarities. Saw builders talk about their chosen numbers. You'll start to notice patterns after a while, maybe, depending on how many saws you do, but keep good notes, just a pad and a piece of paper or however you want to do it. You know, some people might be more inclined to keep notes in a computer or whatever you want to do. I'm old school. I just write it on a pad and a piece of paper, and here we go. So that's the number one thing. Keep your timing notes in there. That way, if you don't work on a saw for 2 weeks, you can go back and see exactly where you were, exactly where you're going. And then I could go back and review my work, okay? So that's super important to me. If you have a good memory, maybe you don't need notes. Number 2, various different sizes and shapes of marker. Okay, permanent markers, I'll often cut the tips to be the shape I want. These markers are super essential for porting just because you can get in there and mark your cylinder and give yourself layout lines, okay? Next thing to assist with that is a ring, okay? Sorry, I dropped it here, guys. You want to, I'm just making sure, okay, we're good. You want to you don't want to do anything, but I use a ring. I use a ring to mark the height of my piston. That way I can mark my timing on the exhaust. Okay. You can use a ring from the saw you're building or a bulk ring you have, whatever. Okay. So I do all my marking of numbers with this ring. We'll show you that in the next video. Okay. So this kind of stuff, it's often overlooked. It's super important. A good permanent marker will save you a lot of trouble. I'm going to come in close here. This is a machinist square. It's not a very precise one, but I use this for marking. I'll put the light on here, guys. I'll use this for marking square lines down the sides. If you wanted to widen the exhaust or the intake port, I use this. You can also see how much space you have in between just for quick references. See that? Okay. You can see this one's pretty wide, this intake port. Okay, but I use this a lot. It works good. Same thing. I have a machinist ruler here. I have a decent amount of machining tools just because I have a lathe, but you can buy this kind of stuff. Any ruler would work. Same thing, you can put it square on the squish band and mark your lines. Not as precise as this method, but again, if you don't have this, use one of these. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to move you guys in really close here. I want you guys to see this tooling up close and personal. Okay, in no particular order. I don't have everything laid out here. I'll probably grab a few more things. I'm going to say this right now. This is super important. When you start your grinding, this is just a recommendation from me. If you want to go your own way. Again, everything that is in this video, anything I do is from my own personal experience. Your mileage may vary. If you guys are just starting grinding, let's see if we can get this thing to focus here. It will not focus. There we go. Okay guys, if you are just starting grinding, this is a single cut carbide cutter, okay? I would probably recommend you start with these. They're way slower. They tend to gum up more with chips, but they're not as aggressive, which means you're not going to make mistakes. I mean, you still can, but these single cut bits, okay, are probably a safer bet for the beginning saw porter. The camera's a little funky here, guys. There we go. Okay, if you've ground on aluminum before, maybe skip these. If you haven't, well, I would suggest these style. It will not focus on that, friends. There we go. Let's see if we can get it here. There we go. See that? Okay, that is a single cut bit. Here's more of a cone shaped one. These are old and dull. I grabbed them. Okay. So that would be my suggestion, simply because these are not as aggressive when you're grinding. Okay. If you have used rotary tooling before and you're comfortable, skip these. These will not take a lot of material off in one pass though. So I feel like that a lot of people, I get a lot of emails from you guys saying you went too far. That happens. It's part of the journey. But it's like, these will probably save you from going too far. Now, if you are comfortable and willing, these are the way to go. Here, we'll do that again. Nice clean fingernail. These are double cut. Okay. These things do not clog. They are typically sharper and they take more material per pass. They last longer. These are high quality tooling. American made. That's what I buy. I can grind many a cylinder with one of these before they're dull. The cheaper stuff you're going to find at Harbor Freight or Princess Auto and that. If you're Canadian, there we go. that stuff, you might get a cylinder out of it, depending on what kind of plating there is on the cylinder. We're going to talk about all that when we lay the cylinder out and we grind it. Okay, so, I mean, realistically, this shape of bit, I can do darn near the whole thing. And then these aren't bad. The problem is they leave a ridge on the end as you go in. So these can be a little bit harder to get a good finish. We're going to talk about finishes too. Okay, these are nice because they go in and leave a nice smooth edge on them. Okay. Another nice thing about these is, I said it before, they don't clog. So, okay. Put the autofocus back on. So, these are typically used for roughing in, okay? And by roughing in, you're getting your shapes down and your numbers. Now, once you get close to your numbers and you think you're where you need to be, you're going to need to chamfer. Again, this seems to be working good for us. There we go. This is a ball diamond. It's tiny. These are good for chamfering. Okay, there you go. And by chamfering, I mean you're going around, especially on the exhaust side. Let's put the light on here. Okay. We still got to clean this cylinder up a little bit. It's a little dirty. You're going around and putting a chamfer on the outside of the cylinder. Okay? On the edge. That sharp edge from grinding, you're going to want to get rid of that, or you're going to cut your piston up real bad. Okay? So, when you're checking your numbers, you're probably going to want to use one of these. These don't remove much material. If you go across the plating a little bit, generally it's not going to hurt anything. The only thing with these is they're super fine, and you got to have good hand strength to hold them. You can also use sandpaper. I'm just going to pause you. You can chamfer with a piece of sandpaper, 300 grit, 340, 500, 600, whatever you want to use. I prefer finer than coarser. But yeah, you're going to want to go around, okay? You're going to want to go around and take that sharp edge off the port, because when you grind it, you're actually fracturing the plating a little bit. And if you don't break that edge from the plating with some good paper, you're going to create microscopic little knives, and they will cut that piston up, especially when the piston gets warm, okay? So be aware of that, guys. When you are starting grinding, the most important thing is your finish. See that ledge here? See that ledge here, guys? That angle? That is a factory bevel on the port. See the bevel? Okay, all the ports are beveled. Now typically it's not as important to bevel your transfers, but I still do them. The most important one to me is the exhaust, but do them all. But the exhaust, make sure she's shiny, okay? And I'll probably repeat a lot of this stuff when we start grinding. And the way you can tell, run your finger in there and feel it, okay? My sense of touch is way better than my eyesight at this point, so, okay? Feel it. It should be smooth like glass. If it's not, you could either hang a ring or you'll cut that piston up. Okay, so we got our sandpaper. If you want to smooth your ports out or get a finer finish, sanding drums, there's small ones, big ones. These work really well. You can run them on a lower speed and just kind of smooth out your intake and your transfers and your exhaust port and get them to a better finish. Okay, same thing with these. These aren't as good. Your grinding stones, they're kind of bouncy and they don't run very good. I tend to not use these, but if this is what you had and you want to use it, have at her. And they load up with aluminum really bad, as you guys can see. Okay, so that basically outlines your cutting tools. Okay, in a nutshell. There's other tools you can use. You can use round cutters. They have tapered cutters that are like a triangle, whatever you guys want to use. This just is kind of what I use. I do have other bits, but you guys get the idea. I like high dollar tooling, or not high dollar, but high quality tooling. Just because they last longer. And for me, I'm not a production shop or anything. I mean, you guys know the deal here, but I don't live close to a place where I can get this tooling. So, okay. Just going to move you guys over here. You guys have asked me a million times, what do I grind with? Canadian fellas, you know that name. This is a die grinder from Princess Auto. I've had this thing for years, 10 years probably. It's starting to get a little tired, but I've ported many saws with this. It has the flex shaft. I put a piece of like foam rubber over there to slow down some of the vibration. I find with my hands, the vibration gets to me. So if you have carpal tunnel or wrist issues or arthritis, maybe space your cylinder grinding out over several days. You tend to get pins and needles in your hands. At least I do. This setup doesn't vibrate too much, but it vibrates enough that sometimes it can aggravate me. You'll get a better job. Okay. I like the flex shaft because I can get right in there. Zing, zing, zing. You see that? Transfer work, I can get right in there. Okay. You guys get the idea again. And if you're doing intake work, I can get right in there and I can stick my pinky on what I'm grinding and then I can just, see that? I find that's better. Some people use just a straight Dremel. That's fine too. Again, guys, anything I talk about on my channel is just what I do. If you do it different, I'm cool with that. So yeah, there you guys go. Okay, so that's what I use. With this one, I grind on about 3.5. I don't grind super fast. I don't want heat. And I don't want chatter. And those carbide cutters will tend to chatter at too low of a speed. So you're gonna have to figure out your machinery and go from there, right? So that's what I grind with, guys. I know it's funny. We're gonna talk about other ways to grind. And then, of course, my timing wheel with my drill chuck. Those of you that have offered me timing adapters that screw onto the crankshaft, I appreciate you. I kind of like this. I think the main reason is I port so many different brands. Like, I'll port anything. I don't do one brand or one saw enough because I'm not a shop, right? That this works on anything, so I don't have to mess around with different adapters and that. But yeah, those of you that offered me those, thank you very much. I appreciate it. There we go, guys. That's the whole setup. I'm going to move you back here a little bit underneath Tinman's bench. Well, there you guys go. As you can see, that's it. You need a notebook, pen, markers, a ring. You don't even need a ring. I mark everything with a ring. It's just easier for me. Various squares and rulers. Whatever you want to grind with, you can grind with one of these. Okay, sorry guys, you can grind with a die grinder. I got 5 or 6 of these. I don't use these typically. My compressor only has like a 40-gallon tank on it. It's not the big one, it's the medium-sized one. It runs too much. I don't like the noise, so you could literally take one of these, put a pressure regulator in line from your air supply, and go to town. As long as your compressor will keep consistent pressure, there's no reason why you can't grind with air. Except for, the problem is with these, they have a large shank, and generally you're not going to be able to get small tooling. It's going to be really hard to get in some of these cylinders. Even this, that's a 50mm cylinder. That's most of your 70cc class saws. It's going to be really hard to wield this thing. Can you do it? For sure. There you go. And if you're going to port smaller saws, remember guys, you're going to need smaller tooling. Your tooling gets smaller as your saw displacement gets smaller. It's physically harder to get into there. That's why It's not that you can't port small displacement saws, it's just that it gets a little more tricky to get in there and do the same kind of work. Okay? Now, I want to talk about something. Fordham's. Google it, F-O-R-E-D-O-M, Fordham tool. They're used a lot in woodworking and that kind of stuff. It's basically a hand piece that goes to an industrial motor with a foot pedal. Those are top notch, guys. They work really well. You have a pedal and you can start the tool as you put it in and shut it off, fully adjustable. You can get right angled pieces, hand pieces and all that. My thing is with Fordham's, for the entry level person that wants to port, here in Canada, I've priced out a Fordham. Fordham's like $2,000 by the time I get all the attachments and pieces that I want. I honestly find, guys, I don't need a Fordham. I can do everything that I do with this setup. Now I have a lathe, so I can adjust things in other ways that maybe a Fordham would help people do. But the one setback to this setup, there's no right angle tools for this kind of system. A right angle tool, if you want to work on upper transfers, you're going to need a right angle tool, or you're going to have gorilla strength, because you're literally going to be holding your grinder far away and you're going to get chatter and you could blow out plating and that. It's doable, but not the easiest thing. So if you have the budget, by all means buy a Fordham tool and a right angled attachment and go to town. Me being old fashioned and not particularly fancy, this works good. I might splurge and get a real Dremel one day, but I think we have one in the house actually. So that's about it, guys. I can't really think of, and I'm sure one of you will say, well, what about this, what about that? But honestly, guys, I'm sure there's a few other bits and pieces that you could add, but this will get you in the game. Porting saws for yourself. This isn't mass production stuff. Guys that port all day for a living, they're going to have a Fordham. They're going to have 5 or 6 Fordhams, multiple pedals, and different tools for every operation in the grinding. But I mean, we're talking your hobbyist and your basic entry level person. But here's the funny part, guys. This stuff was, when I was entry level, I bought all this stuff. But now I'm doing reed saws and all kinds of silly builds, and I'm still using the same tools, guys. The main thing you want to invest in is knowledge, understanding how a two-stroke works, and that's why I did that cutaway, because I knew I wanted to do this. It was really important to me, guys, but I needed to have that cutaway series so that you could go back and put it in a playlist so that you guys could go back, review it, and try and understand. This stuff is very, very simple how it works. How to modify it, there's no one way. If you talk to 10 builders, and this is what's funny, if you talk to 10 builders and ask them, I have a 372, what numbers should I use? Most people would rattle off a set of numbers that are floating around on the internet, but it's like, if you talk to 10 builders, they'll probably give you 10 different sweet number sets that they use. Are any of them wrong? No. That's the problem with this, guys, is that you talk to people that they get saws built by one builder. Let's use one super popular in Canada. First ported saw I ever ran was from Walker's Saw Shop. Okay, Walker's Saw Shop, Nanaimo, British Columbia. Gold standard, guys. Loggers, they use Walkers. I've never spoken to a Canadian logger that doesn't run Walkers. People buy Walkers, why? Because they're super, super reliable. Legit. That's straight goods, guys. Walkers builds a super reliable saw. So, guys that run with Walkers, they're going to run with Walkers because they're reliable. And when you're making your living with a power saw, you're going to go with somebody that, typically, not everybody will, but you're going to go with somebody that has a reputation for reliability, which Walkers does. Okay? Now that's just one example of a builder. But what I'm saying, guys, is when people like a saw built by a certain builder, It's because they like how that saw runs for how they cut, when they cut, where they cut, what length of bar you use, your chain, how you file, that all comes into the equation. So the only way to know what you like and what numbers you like is to experiment. That's why I can't just say do this, this, and this, and you'll have a magic saw. Because how you grind your transfers, where you grind your transfers, how rough you leave surfaces, the shapes of your ports, that all comes into effect, guys. And here's the deal. You could give the same numbers to 3 different saw builders and say build a saw, and I bet you money all 3 of them will run different. I've talked about this with other porters, and from the conversations we've had, that seems to be the general consensus, because it's all in the hand doing the grinding, not the tooling used or anything. But even that, what shapes you make and how things flow together. Well, what tools are you using? A bigger cutter is gonna grind a different shape than a smaller cutter. So there's so much variable in this whole hobby, guys, that we could all build one of these with the same numbers, and we could literally all build a different saw. And that's the truth. And then, guys, remember, we could have 3 670 Echoes and port them all the same. One will be extra strong, and the other 2 will just be strong. Once in a while, you build that freak saw, and you have no idea why it's that warm. That's the one you're chasing. You're trying to recreate that magic. Those are when builders have magic recipes, it's because they built a couple that were really good, and they know. Okay, guys, I've kind of gotten off topic. I'm rambling. Just general porting talk. Remember, so basic tooling, this is attainable for anybody. You might have to save up a little bit here and there, depending on budget. But I mean, this is stuff you could literally go to Princess Auto or Harbor Freight, drop, I don't know, depending on what country you live in, $100, and you could have all this stuff. And you can port a power saw. And that's the deal, guys. Okay, part 4, tooling. Part 5, I'm going to show you guys, we're going to mark the cylinder and measure everything, and I'm going to show you guys how I do it. I'm going to teach you guys little tricks so that you don't go too far. Because going too far is the difference between a power saw that runs awesome and one that maybe doesn't have enough torque or all that stuff. Okay, guys, so in the next part, part 5, I'm going to show you guys how to lay out a cylinder and not go too far. It's very simple, and if you use this method, I think you guys will be happy with your results and you'll be able to recreate them. Okay, part 4, how to port a chainsaw. Tooling. As always, thanks for watching. Take her easy. Later, guys.